In my recent guides, I didn't end up doing a walkthrough of how to play Preservation, so I wanted to do a little bit of that today, talk about some basic pulls and kind of how to play the spec on a sort of simple level, but then also get into the weeds with it with some extra fights and sort of what you might need to expect in fights that kind of break the mold for Preservation. We're a very flexible spec with a lot of ways to heal our problems, but you really do have to be creative sometimes with how you solve those issues. So this should give you some fundamental building blocks that you can then take into dungeons and run with, but there's lots to consider here. So let's dive right into this one with not too much of a delay, but if you do need the original guide, I'll have that one linked down below. And of course, hi, my name is BwbBsJu. I make a lot of healing content, so if you like healing content, hey, get subscribed, it means a lot to me. Or if you just like listen to me talk about World of Warcraft, hey, appreciate you. All right, first things first. Again, if you haven't watched an actual guide for Preservation, I'm not going to be going over a ton of the buttons, so make sure you've watched a guide or you're at least familiar with the buttons, as I'll be just calling out random talent names and whatnot every once in a while. Furthermore, I don't really mind what you run, but this is expecting that you're running Temporal Anomaly. I highly recommend the Living Flame talents right now, but Grace Period is the star of the show right now, so make sure you have 1 or 2 points in this, and whether you're a Call of Ysera player or you play my more pug-oriented build, it doesn't really matter. As long as we have that Grace Period, you're in business, because that's going to be getting a workout this tier. Now, there's 2 basic combos that I want us to have as our building blocks. You're going to turn these combos into your own as the situation like requires, right? If the healing gets tough and you're missing certain tools, you have to be flexible on Prez. But I think this is a really good building block to get a lot of new players started. And if you're a veteran healer, this is the stuff that will get you thinking about what else you can do. So let's start. We have the double and the Temporal Anomaly start. The TA start is very basic. You throw a Temporal Anomaly and there's 3 spells I like to cash out with: Living Flame, Reversion, and Dream Breath. Dream Breath is our highest potency cash out, and cash out just means the end of a combo. We've cashed out the echoes into something. These Dream Breaths are ticking on us for double. One of them is going to be ticking for its original value, and the other one's going to be ticking at half potency. This is incredibly powerful because it's one of our strongest healing throughputs that we have available to us in Mythic Plus, as well as in Raid. You can actually get a ton done with a single Temporal Anomaly and a Dream Breath. That being said, this only lasts for 16 seconds, which is the duration of an entire Temporal Anomaly cooldown and then some, but you do have to wait the 14 seconds for your Dream Breath to come back. So it's not like you can constantly use this. Furthermore, we're going to have other ways to set up here. So while this is useful and you want to keep it around as it's the most potent setup, it's not always the first play we should make. And you'll understand why in a moment. Living Flame and Reversion can both have a chance to give you an Essence Burst, but Reversions is only 15% and Living Flames is only 20%. However, when you have a Temporal Anomaly out or a bunch of Echoes, every single one of these is actually a chance at getting you an Essence Burst. So if I throw this out, notice I got 2 Essence Bursts in that single Living Flame. That means of the 6 or 7 or however many I had out there, I was able to roll that 20% chance twice. This also works for Reversion. Hold on, we'll click off it. Oh, I missed. We hit Reversion, see? I still got an Essence Burst. This is pretty important, as getting Essence Burst means we get more Disintegrate casts, which is more damage and more mana return. Emerald Blossoms, which if your Ouroboros is stacked up, might be really powerful and is sometimes worth spamming just for the heal. And Standard Echoes. Remember that a Standard Echo is 105% potency, while Temporal Anomalies will set at 45%. This is a pretty important tool, so getting some free Echoes is not a bad thing. Now, the other reason you might want to cash out with Living Flame is that it's a nice bursty heal. You'll get a ton of healing on a bunch of people pretty quickly with a high Essence Burst chance. You're going to want to cash out with Reversion so that we can get our tier set ticking. This is going to be pretty important in the War Within, as the instant cast Living Flames part of our tier set will actually be a part of our talent tree. Just note that on the Reversion side of things, you won't be able to power them up in the War Within unless they're not telling me something that they're doing to the talent tree, but still a useful setup. So if you throw the Temporal Anomaly and you hit Reversion, and please ignore big numbers there, that's just because their training dummies are always taking damage. This is giving us chances at those instant cast Living Flames, which we can have up to 2 stacks of. This is pretty powerful in like any given healing situation, because you can just kind of instantly heal someone for a pretty chunky amount, and with an Echo on them, it's a actually disgusting amount. So I like the Reversions so we can get instant cast Living Flames. But if you need more Essence Burst or a burst to your heal, like some people have actually gotten pretty chunked at this point, then the instant cast Living Flame or the standard Living Flame is a good option that won't burn any of your other cooldowns, right? This is 30 seconds. This is 30 seconds by default, right? This is based on essence. This is 14 seconds, right? So Living Flame and Reversion are nice low cooldown and no cooldown options to get some healing and get some essence burst. But the fun part, every single reversion running on these targets is a real grace period, meaning this is providing the full 15% bonus healing amount. That's actually really strong, given that our other temporal anomaly effects get reduced through here. Grace period does not. Developers, please, for the love of God, don't take this away from me. I beg of you. So that extra bonus healing goes a long way. So you could potentially Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom on top of somebody and get more healing. This is why your opener is a lot of the times a temporal anomaly into something, because that gives you so many options for how you want to heal and how you want to boost people up when the going gets rough. Now, the other combo we need to talk about is the double double, and this works really well hand in hand with our temporal anomaly combo. This works well when you already have 4 essence, but note that you might get an essence burst doing this combo, which might make it easier to actually connect all the pieces together. But I call it a double double because you simply place an echo, hit a reversion. Place an echo, hit a reversion. Now, again, please ignore the gigantic numbers you just saw, but that means there's 4 normal reversions ticking, meaning if I use a fire breath, all of them will be empowered ticks. That's a lot of healing before I've used my TA, my Dream Breath, my Spirit Bloom, or anything else in my kit. The double double is also powerful again because there's chances that essence burst, and now 4 out of the 5 targets in your party will have that bonus 15% healing as well as a real gigantic heal over time on them. I love this setup, but what's so nice about it is, yeah, if you put double double and get one on me, then I could temporal anomaly, and I'm not going to be able to hit everyone here correctly. But now the targets that have it are going to have 2 of these ticks on them while having a normal reversion. That is a gigantic amount of healing. So you're able to do both your most potent temporal anomaly combo alongside some pretty potent grace periods. The only downside to the double double is that you don't typically put it on your tank, and it will use both your reversion charges. Now, at a 7.1 second recharge with my current stats, that's not too bad. But just note, if your tank's in trouble, the echo reversion that might save their life might not be ready yet, but at the start of a pull, your tank is supposed to be their safest. So with any luck, you don't have a demon hunter that just jumps in and explodes on you. So what does your opener look like? Well, here's what I recommend. The basic opener is to hit hover, right? You don't have to hit hover, but walk into the pull, temporal anomaly your allies, and then go do damage. I'm sorry, these dummies are still bugged, but go in and do damage. Use that disintegrate, get your mana back, right? Throw your living flames to get your leaping flames, live your best life, and then cash out. If everyone's taking damage and the mobs are hitting us, use the Dream Breath to heal them, use a reversion to heal them, use a living flame, whatever works. If it's a lot of damage, work towards the Dream Breath. If not a lot's going on, hit the reversions to get some grace periods started. If you want to do even more damage, maybe throw the living flame just to have a higher chance at essence burst. This is going to get you your mana back, get you on the board for damage, and allow you to heal. And if the healing's rough, you can hit the Dream Breath and then immediately go to healing. Whenever you have downtime, use the disintegrates to get your mana back. And trust me, you'll get your mana back, as is entirely possible to throw out moves, get essence bursts, and blast disintegrates to return your mana bar. I'll have a pretty silly clip playing at this point showing you how well that works. So this loop, you could do it forever. Now, the other option is you could walk into a pull, right? Throw the temporal anomaly and instantly cast out reversion when everyone's got it. This is useful because it's going to start giving you your leaping flames earlier in a pull, right? Or not your leaping flames, your instant cast living flames. That means you're going to very quickly and easily get to your damage or potentially healing while everyone's ticking, but you don't have TA Dream Breath up. So your other setups might be weaker, but remember, all these people still have a reversion on them. So you could hit them with a Dream Breath for that boosted healing for a little bit, or a full charge Spirit Bloom to get some nice chunky heals out if people are getting blasted. But what about that double double? Well, the good news about the double double is you can do it in any order, but I recommend using it first before your temporal anomaly. So start by getting the double double out. Okay, 4 people have it. Now I can throw my TA, my Dream Breath, and go back to doing damage. And I might not even cash out that Dream Breath immediately. I might wait for damage to come in like normal. You have somewhere in the realm of 16 to 17 seconds on an echo. Hold on. Yeah, somewhere in the, I think it's 18 or 17 seconds. It's quite a long time period, so you don't have to cash it out immediately. My only rule for you is that if you throw out a temporal anomaly, make sure that the echoes are cashed out before you throw the next one, as your temporal anomaly's cooldown is lower than the length of your echo on a target. So if, say, hey, I'm about to have TA back up, I could then throw a reversion and then use that cash out to set up maybe, say, a couple of thicker heals. And then all of a sudden, I have a much fatter Dream Breath ticking on a few of my targets. That's actually really useful if, say, there's a few people who are under geared or maybe don't have as much self-repair, like impending victories and whatnot. This could be a good way to heal them up. And finally, remember, the importance of damage here is quite literally that some of the stuff does cost mana. So if you have a moment to restore your mana, one disintegrate in the time it takes for the disintegrate to finish will fill your mana back up and then some from the temporal anomaly you threw. This does chain together. Now let's head off to Brackenhide Hollow. I think this is a great dungeon to show off some basics and a great place to test your metal as a healer, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Hi, Bowser the Editor here. I don't talk about range issues very much, and it's a bit of an oversight on my part. I do have an entire video about positioning on preservation and maybe in general for healers, and that's from season 2, but it still holds up today. Realistically, you're going to see in a lot of these pulls, if there's somebody out of my range, I put an echo on them when I start any of these combos, and I try to go out of my way to make sure that player in particular is hit with an echo so that I know I'm getting them in some form of healing. You might not necessarily be able to heal them as much as other players as quickly, but if players don't want to position well for preservation, that's sort of a them problem, but you can do the best you can to position so that you can hit as many players as possible while still accommodating somebody who might be out of range. That positioning video really does hold up, so go check it out. This opening pull is exactly what you think it is. I set up a double-double, I go into the pull with a temporal anomaly, and then I blast. I do as much damage as I can, and then I cash out and I continue to heal and continue to do damage. This double-double hasn't always been a part of my rotation. I've certainly used it before, but it wasn't like a mainstay in my rotation until I realized just how much it was giving me. Also note that in a pinch, you can double-double in, say, Dream Breath. It's not going to look as pretty as the reversion setup, but if you were to, say, throw a temporal anomaly, cash out with reversion, and then find out that, like, the world was on fire, you could echo some players up and do sort of a fake double-double, maybe we call it the lettuce wrap with the Dream Breath, and you're good to go. Honestly, this works pull to pull time and time again. And Brackenhide Hollow is full of these basic pulls with a lot of random damage on random targets that if you have your nameplate set up like Plater, you can see who's being cast on, you can see what's coming next, and really push yourself as a healer. This is good from follower dungeon, it's your first time healing, all the way to like pushing yourself in a high Brackenhide. So I highly recommend that you give Brackenhide a go, because a lot of these pulls are simple, good for practice, have their lethal moments that are kind of terrifying if your team isn't working together or hitting defensives, and a first boss that can be a bit of a nail biter if it's your first time there, with a couple of baits, like the heal isn't actually always worth kicking because it doesn't scale with dungeon level, but those earth totem, or the earth bolts, excuse me, are real dangerous, and having your team kick those and trying to reduce incoming damage is the mark of a strong team. So I really like this place, from pugging to teams, to really get yourself warmed up and to get yourself ready for the difficulties that Mythic Plus will throw you. All right, let's start with individual bosses, but I do want to make a disclaimer before we get into all of these. A lot of these bosses in Dragonflight, and typically in World of Warcraft, are not the healer's responsibility to do everything. Yes, on the first boss of No-Code, usually the big stone dragon, it is the healer's responsibility to run around and fire off all the ballistas, but no, if somebody doesn't want to move in during a dangerous storming phase or use a defensive on a knockback when their health is low, that's on them. There's enough damage that when you get to a high enough key level, people are going to get flattened, and because the Mythic Plus system is starting in this 10 department from last season, with our new 2s being more like a 12 from last season, players are going to get flattened when their gear score is low. Do not take the responsibility of other players not being good, but I do recommend you're kind and explain mechanics, especially in low keys. Tell them what they can do to help you out. If somebody's being a butt about it though, that's on them. Do not take responsibility like you ruined the key because they didn't want to help. And on this No-Code storming boss we're going to talk about first, trust me, I have range issues on Discipline Priest. If Disc Priest is having range issues, everyone's going to. So try not to worry about it here as preservation. For this Storming boss, my recommendation is to note the 2 lethal mechanics. The blue circle, the Thunder Strike I think it's called, that's the first thing. If anyone isn't at full health, there's a chance they die, just because it does that much damage. So make sure you heal everyone up to full and move around as necessary to heal people. Remember, your temporal anomaly goes really far, so use this to heal people out of range, and I like to plant myself near a ranged target. If there's a Shadow Priest or a Boomkin that loves to stand away from you, make sure you're standing next to them so that when everyone spreads out, they're still in your range. Now, during this phase, you're also going to, in all these phases, they're going to find these balls. These balls are going to increase your damage and your healing. It's worth collecting. They cap out at 10, but you kind of want to get to that 7, 8 stack or higher, all the way to 10, because the healing is that important for you to survive the storming mechanic. Trust me, steal them from the DPS, and if they get mad, explain it to them afterwards, or just tell them earlier, hey, I need balls for this healing mechanic. Especially on Tyrannical, don't think you're special and should do it without the balls. It really does make a difference and makes the mechanic a lot easier. I also like to say run in or die during the storming phase, as it does get people off their ass. And again, if they want to stand out on the other side of the planet and not help you, that's a them problem, not a you problem. As players run in during the storming phase, they're going to take a lot of damage. Note that this damage is avoidable, so having avoidance on your gear, as well as using Zephyr, can help with the damage. I want you to think max potency. Set up stasis with big moves in it, like a temporal anomaly and a level 1 dream breath, and maybe even a full charge spirit bloom. Use your stasis whenever it's necessary, and try not to dip into your emergency heals. Your goal is to kind of not over heal. Get the full potency out of as many moves as possible, using your echoes and your verdant embraces as needed. Feel free to send your own defensives as well as your external defensives to help people out. Use emergency cooldowns to catch up. If you feel like you're behind and you can't save someone's life, a quick temporal anomaly Emerald Communion setup or a fast hit of rewind should save everyone's life. Now on to another difficult boss, and this one's going to draw heavily from what we just talked about, the third boss of Halls of Infusion. This Ice Shaman hits like a truck, but note that this damage isn't avoidable. That's because this damage is a dot that's put on everyone in the instance. So it's very important here that you use your defenses essentially on cooldown, and if you want to instruct the other DPS to do that as well, hey, use your defensives on cooldown, it'll make a difference in helping you get to the end. It's a lot of damage. I want you to use everything at full potency. So again, temporal anomalies into dream breaths, getting reversions out essentially on cooldown, and whenever you have an open opportunity to do some damage, send out a disintegrate. And at some point in the fight, especially on high tyrannical weeks, make sure you do a big Emerald Communion setup. Although note that your Emerald Communion is going to feel terrible if you don't set it up correctly. So throw out that TA, hit the Verdant Embrace, hover, hit Emerald Communion, and you'll heal everyone up to full and kind of soft reset everyone's health bars and be back on the right track with a little bit more mana. Whenever your TA's down between your big Spirit Blooms and your big Dream Breath combos, honestly, whip Living Flames at the lowest health target. This is going to get you Essence Burst, which can mean more manual echoes, which can mean more healing. This could also be Disintegrate, which means more damage and more mana regen. But this also, while not efficient at actually saving everyone's life, is good enough to help you get to your next button, and it's something I don't implement nearly enough, and when I have been implementing it recently, it's been doing wonders for me. I don't have any footage of it here, but trust me, sending out those Living Flames on the lowest health target when you're between your TAs does a ton of work, and as many echoes as you want to throw out to do some cleave healing. This fight sucks, and again, they'll hit a point on Tyrannical where you need your team to help themselves. Every single self-heal and every single health pot, health stone, and defensive use does wonders in helping you keep everyone alive. Just remember that your mastery here is very important, so try to make sure that your health bar is up first before you throw the temporal anomaly, ensuring that you're going to get some big chunky mastery healing. If you need more healing, dip into the mastery stat a little bit harder. Just try not to tank the rest of your stats, but more mastery here will make a difference. Onto the snake boss of Uldaman's, our last example, and this one is unfortunately not super hard, but you might not like the answer. You need to rely on your teammates on this one. Your critical points of healing is that the knockback hurts, but the only thing that's lethal after the knockback is of course the bleed. We have cauterized to deal with the bleed, and you can basically disrupt the bleed on cooldown. However, using the bleed cleanse isn't enough. If a bleed is on a target and you have a 1-minute cooldown, it's surely going to affect a player during a knockback, and that's what's going to get them killed. Use your smaller healing tools, like your heal over times, to heal the full party. The person who gets targeted is going to want your echoes and your reversions, your living flames, and all the double ups possible to help keep them healthy. If they have an invulnerability, like an immune of some kind, or like a blessing of protection, that's another way to remove the bleed, and hopefully you have paladins and friends who will help you get rid of those bleeds. It does make a big difference. But it's that knockback. Use Zephyr, Time Dilation, and Rescue Shields with Twin Guardian to keep people alive if it's just not enough. You might get someone close to full, and then the knockback's going to happen. It's worth going for a rescue, although do be careful. You will rescue through a line and get stunned. That's okay because you'll still actually get the shield off most of the time, but note that it is possible to get stunned here, and that could turn out really, really bad, but hopefully the shield does its job. Your emergency heals here can be used whenever you think someone might not make it, but it does require some planning. Like, you want an Emerald Communion already set up and running during a knockback that could be lethal, and you want to hit rewind before the knockback because it does take a couple of moments for rewind to do its full healing. And so you won't save someone's life by using it just before the mechanic. You need maybe a solid second and a half to get that healing out. And everyone else, defensive when they're low, defensive when they get the bleed, try to survive the knockbacks. And of course, your tank, you, and everyone else can coordinate the stuns on the boss to actually prevent knockbacks. Although this is a much higher level strat and will require a decent amount of communication, so this isn't always viable. Listen, sometimes it's not your fault and the pug's gotta help you out, but I hope this advice helped because there's a lot of scenarios where a Preservation Evoker can do just a little bit better positioning, a little bit better in the cooldown management, get the full potency out of their kit, and help everyone out. There are going to be big bursty heals like the Frog Boss croaking in Halls of Infusion, where you're going to want to set up and hit like a fat verdant embrace right as everyone takes damage. There'll be very strong instances of damage, say in the last boss of Azure Vaults, when the big crystal comes out, where you need to use defensives, keep people alive, but maybe also contribute damage on that crystal with the debuff so that the pulsing stops. These sorts of things are hard to juggle, but prepare before the mechanic comes out. It's worth learning the little details, like that last boss in Azure Vaults. It's at 75, 50, and 25 that the boss brings out the crystals. So you can even save cooldowns and even hold damage to make sure that everyone's ready for when the crystals come out. But it's not all on you as a healer, so do the best you can, learn from your peers, and try to be helpful, especially if you're in lower keys. Use this information to help those players get better, and if you're brand new, I promise you, those follower dungeons, heroics, and M0s, and even +2s are a great place to start to throw out your abilities and get some practice in. And of course, I think Brackenhide Hollow is the best place to practice, so get your reps in there to start, but note that the more on your feet you can be, the more flexible you can be, the more preservation takes off as a healer. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.